Hello, my name is Aaliyah, and I will be responding to the claim of failure of FIFA to become more strict on national team selection rules will have a negative effect on the game of soccer. He supports his first claim by stating his supporting claims, which are it leads to misuse of rules and guidelines. These rules allow a player too many opportunities to change their minds. Second, it allows teams to unfairly stack their lineups in their favor. And third, it takes away the overall feel of the game. And in response to his main claim, my claim is that due to the national team selection rules, it creates a positive effect on the game of soccer by allowing soccer players to embrace new/different nationalities, which leads to better competition. Again, in response to his first claim, to support this claim, countering that they have too many opportunities, these rules and guidelines keep structure and decrease random team switching because they must have qualifications. In his evidence in Article 6 and Article 7, he's stating that they have too many opportunities, but through the analysis of the FIFA statutes, these rules are already strong enough and should decrease random team switching and follow its rules, because first it states that they must have relevance in order to switch teams, so they can't just pick up any player without having family relevance, or they must have acquisition, which means they must live in that territory for a certain amount of years. So there's less opportunities, and they must follow these guidelines as listed in Article 6 and Article 7. Though there were also a number of players who played for their country of birth, even though they spent much of their lives living elsewhere, was saying that though they were opted to play for the country that they were living in because they qualified for living in that territory, they choose to stay and support the team that they were born in. For example, a man named Mesut Özil, who was the German-born son of a Turkish immigrant who opted to play for Germany in 2010 FIFA World Cup, despite repeated overtures from Turkey. And another example, Lionel Messi, who was born in Argentina and played for the Argentinian national team, even though he has been living in Barcelona since the age of 13. So basically, though the qualifications are meant to play in another team, that their culture that they embrace because they've been living there, they were opted, so they were basically offered to pay. They did choose to stay with that team. The national, in response to his second claim, the national team selection rules have a positive effect which allows teams to enhance competition. And his claim states that it allows teams to unfairly stack their lineups in their favor, which is kind of seen like a claim of value because it's a dispute over what is fair. But it has a positive effect because it enhances the competition, and overall just each player can have a better successful soccer career. And examples of players who were born in countries different than what they played on are in the German squad, 3 players, Lucas Podolski, Klose, and Piotr Trzaskowski, were born in Poland and moved across the border as children. So they played for Germany, although they lived in Poland since they were children. And another of Germany's players is Vladimir Geronimo, and he did not become a German citizen until 2009. So he was born in Germany, but he played for Brazil because he became a citizen. Because again, it's through these qualifications. It's not like they can just randomly pick up any player just from a small country because they are good. They must have some type of relevance or must live in that territory for a while. And his third claim is he states that it takes away the overall feel of the game having other players from other countries playing in that country who are not true born citizens. And he states that they don't take pride in their country that they're born in. But overall, I feel that my claim is that taking too much pride in your team has significant violent effects on the overall feel of the game, because in a specific case, how players and fans take too much pride is that In Brazil, police have made an arrest in a grisly incident during a soccer match in which a referee's leveling a red card penalty set off a clash with a player, and that resulted in the player's death and ended with the officials being brutally killed. So overall, these players, they take too much pride, and it results in death because he got a red card, and their fans, as a result of that, they mobbed the referee after the game and ended up killing him. So I feel that these rules, they enhance the level of competition, but it also makes it dangerous for the players and the referees. Thank you.
Well, I kind of like the general explanation that you have here, and that is that there's a set of rules that is in place to impose some limitation on the teams that people can play, and those rules do impose a limitation. The fact that there is some flexibility in how those rules can be applied doesn't mean that you have an open system. And I thought that you explained that pretty well. The advocates' arguments would have to show, for instance, that there was something that was particularly abusive about this process. You know, the grandmother rule, for instance. Why is that insufficient? Why is that problematic? I didn't really hear a lot of evidence based on the advocates' evidence. I heard your counterclaims dealing with evidence, which I thought were good examples. What you want to do is contrast those examples to what the advocate was talking about. So, as I recall, there was the one example of the guy who played, he was English or German, or Belgian, and he played for one or the other country because his grandmother was in the other spot. I don't really remember which way it went. And what you do is you point out, look, we've got all these people. You mentioned the German Turkish-born guy, the person who's was born in Argentina but lived in Spain, the three teammates on the German team, and the reason that they're all making their choices, and you kind of put it into a context and explain that so that the context seems to be reasonable, that the choices that they're making in that particular situation. It doesn't sound particularly abusive. One of the things that I think also needs to be shown is that these folks do have the ability to decide for themselves, and it sounded like you even said at one point that the one person had resisted the lure of some other team that wanted them to play for them because they felt a greater degree of loyalty to the other side. That I thought was pretty good. On the second point where you're talking about it being unfair, I think you're right that this is a value claim, and that there ought to be, we have to be careful about whether or not that is a legitimate argument for us to be talking about in this context. The argument about it enhancing competition, I think that would be helpful if we had some examples of teams that did better because they were able to use this. Why is that a problem? I think that's a good challenge that you ought to be making on that particular point. The issue of pride on the third point, I like the idea that you've got here, but it doesn't sound to me like it's related to any of the issues that we're talking about who plays for what team. It basically means that soccer fans are crazy, as opposed to, they're crazy because, the Spaniard played for Argentina or the Germans played for Poland or something like that. It just sounds like Brazilians are nuts, which makes me really look forward to the Olympics in a couple of years. Oh boy.